كل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا مع ليلى الحسيني في بث حي ومباشر وعبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan with Layla Al-Husseini. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues with your host, Layla Al-Husseini.
كل هذه القناديل تضوي لمن كل هذه القناديل تضوي لمن وهذه المواويل في العرض تشكو لمن هل الأرض عاد لها ذو يدا هل الأرض عاد لها ذو يدا فعاد الزمان فعاد الزمان وعادت عدن للأرض عاد لها ذو يدا فعاد الزمان فعاد الزمان وعادت عدن بمن لأجل اليمن بمن لأجل اليمن في أرضنا على الغيم فوق رفيف المنى وسر الينابيع في أرضنا فبالحب نحيا فبالحب نحيا فبالحب نحيا ويحيا الوطن لمن لأجل اليمن لمن لأجل اليمن.
And good morning to all of our listeners listening to us via the radio dial or online from Michigan, Ohio, Windsor, Canada, and also from Washington on WDMV 700 AM. This is Adel Mazhab
and Hanan Yahya,
and we are presenting to you a wonderful program today. We're talking about country of Yemen, the Middle Eastern country, our home country, and we're talking about 3 years after its spring, aspirations, hardship, and harvest. It's a great program. We have two great guests, and actually more than two. We have three if we can reach to our guest in Yemen as well. We're talking to them about the revolution. We have Sara Ishaq, who is an Oscars-nominated director for the film Karama Has No Walls. We will talk about Sara, and she'll tell us about what she witnessed in the revolution in a little bit. We will also have Ibrahim Al-Qatabi, who is a Yemeni-American political and human rights activist in New York City. He will be talking to us about how the community reacted, as well as how the revolution has come forward and what has been accomplished and what has not been accomplished. So we have a wonderful program for you today. Please participate in the program using the social networking hashtags, Radio Baladi, as always, as one word, or you can call us in the studio, 248-557-3300, if you have any questions or comments about the Yemeni revolution and what it has came so far. So, if you don't know much about the Yemeni revolution, let's tell them a little bit, Hanan, about what has happened, the background and the timeline.
Because it's really important to know what happened before that caused it to come about and where it's at today. So if you don't know much, the Yemeni revolution came as an extension to the Arab Spring, which had toppled 3 dictators at the time in 2011. Yemenis were able to create a unique revolution. Their struggle came peaceful, unarmed, and led by women and youth. The young revolutionaries were able to create innovative methods to voice their demands and make their voices reach the whole world. And we all know what happened in 2011. What began in Tunisia and moved on to Libya and Egypt, Yemen was just to follow. So why was there even a revolution to begin with, you might ask? What was going on in the country to cause millions of people, old and young, men and women, to go out in the streets and protest? So it's a set of problems. It's more complicated than just a corrupt dictator. It's related to the following issues. It's conflicting loyalties to the tribe, the clan, or the state, a lack of transparency in appointments and positions, which eventually leads to the marginalization of certain social groups, the lack of transparency and accountability, both of which lead to corruption, of course. Perhaps even more dangerously, the country suffers from a pronounced lack of modernization, which is essential to the creation of a modern democratic society. And consequently, this has led to an increased military and tribal presence. So, of course, if the democratic presence isn't there and alive and thriving, this is the consequence, a country led by military and tribal presence. And I think that's what happened over the years in Yemen. And especially, we always like to say it's just Ali Abdullah Saleh, but it's just, it's him and his,
And when the Arab Spring came, if there was a country that needed a revolution, it would be ideal, it would be Yemen. But people were very, very skeptical in the beginning because of the uniqueness of the Yemeni people. Yemeni people are very armed. There are 90 million pieces of weapon bared by the people. It's the second country in the world for its citizens to bear arms after the United States. So it was shocking at the beginning that people would come to the streets. There might be bloodshed everywhere because of the people, of what's happening. If people would go into a revolution or clash together, they would go into war. There were some clashes. There were some bloodshed. There were some martyrs, people who passed away during the revolution. And the revolution harvests not just positive things, but also negative things that are going on right now. And
exactly.
We're going to get a piece of that from Yemen later on the program. So we will try now to connect with Sara Ishaq, and we will introduce her in a little bit.
Again, she is nominated for an Oscar for directing the documentary Karama Has No Walls. Now, if you haven't seen it, please do, and it's an exceptional movie.
And it's actually showing here in Detroit. We'll get you the date in a little bit. And if you follow GMM Radio on Twitter, you can see the link for where you can watch her amazing movie, which talks about, I don't want to ruin it for you. You have to watch the movie to see its greatness.
Sure.
But we will talk to her right now. So we will try to connect with Sarah. Meanwhile, we're going to take a small commercial break, and then we will come back with Sarah Ishaq.
مؤسسة الحياة للإغاثة والتنمية في مدينة ساوثفيلد في ولاية ميشيغان، المؤسسة الرائدة في العمل الإغاثي والإنساني. مؤسسة الحياة ومنذ 20 سنة تقدم العون للفقراء والمحتاجين والمتضررين بسبب الكوارث الطبيعية أو الحروب في شتى أنحاء العالم. كما تقوم مؤسسة الحياة بكفالة الأيتام والعوائل الفقيرة وحفر آبار المياه في مناطق الحاجة، وأيضا تقوم مؤسسة الحياة بتزويد المشافي والمستوصفات الصحية بالأدوية والمعدات الطبية وإنشاء مدارس وعيادات طبية في أقطار عديدة من العالم. مؤسسة الحياة مرخصة للعمل في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، وجميع التبرعات معافاة من الضرائب. اتصلوا بمؤسسة الحياة للإغاثة والتنمية على رقم الهاتف المجاني 1-800-827-3543 أو زوروا موقعهم الإلكتروني على www.lifeusa.org.
يا صايغين الذهب حبيت أدلعها.
انجي دايما لصاحبها زهر عبد الحق مجوهرات رائعة الجمال للعرائس، أروع تشكيلة من المجوهرات الألماس، مجوهرات نادرة لا مثيل لها ولا يوازي سعرها أي مجوهرات أخرى، في دقة الصنع وجمال التصميم، صياغة عربية وأوروبية. أحلى قطع الذهب، الألماس، البلاتين والأحجار الكريمة وخواتم الزواج لأحلى مناسبة في حياتكم. نظام مضمون 100%. يشترون الذهب بأفضل الأسعار الموجودة في الأسواق تصلح كافة القطع. مجوهرات زهير عبد الحق تقع على 5601 شيفر رود في مدينة ديربون. اتصلوا بهم على 313-582-7888 313-582-7888. أحلى مجوهرات لأحلى مناسبة.
And Sarah, are you on the line with us?
I am, yes.
Okay, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good. We'd like to congratulate you for winning or for being nominated for the Oscars, and we wish you that you win. We're all rooting for you, but your nomination is an accomplishment, is a great accomplishment by itself. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Tell us, you went to Yemen at the beginning of the revolution. Tell us why first you went. You tried to go to Yemen back. And for the listeners, you are Yemeni Scottish. You grew up in Sana'a, but you moved to Edinburgh in Scotland in 2001. You have an MFA in film directing in 2012. From Scotland. So you were doing your master's then, and then you went to Yemen. You've done some work in Palestine and you've done some work elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But why did you go back to Yemen at the height of the revolution, or it was prior to the revolution, was it?
It was really the first week. I mean, there was there was some sort of turmoil already happening in Yemen, and it was I'd followed the Egyptian revolution, 18 days from Scotland, but I never really expected it to take place in Yemen. I didn't think that they would catch on. I didn't think they would have the motivation. The reason I went to Yemen had nothing to do with the revolution. It had nothing to do with, I didn't have the foresight whatsoever. I'd been away from Yemen for years, roughly about 4 years, and I just felt, I was in the middle of my MFA course, doing filmmaking, and Yemen is a place, of course, that is very, it's unexplored and it's underrepresented through film and through cinema, and I my intention was to go to Yemen and make a film about my family, and sort of to talk about the culture and to talk about certain issues that I had as a Yemeni Scottish female who grew up in Yemen and had some issues with some of the social restrictions and cultural restrictions that were imposed on me that affected the way I could that I led my life and the way I could pursue a career and whatever, so on. So that was the main reason I went back. I really intended to go to spend a few weeks with my family, to interview them and just to make a short film as a university graduation project. And what ended up happening was that I arrived, and keeping in mind that this was about a year after I'd spent some time in Palestine, and I'd attended protests in Palestine, and I'd filmed there, and I was eventually kicked out of Palestine because I'd been, I was seen filming in places that I shouldn't have been, according to them. So I still had that sort of I still really felt that I hadn't completed what I set out to do when I was in Palestine. And then I arrived in Yemen, and lo and behold, a revolution was taking place, and there were violations of human rights that were happening on the streets. And I couldn't stay away, and I couldn't turn a blind eye to it when I'd gone to another country that wasn't my own, and tried to do that very thing, So there were some difficulties with family, sort of trying to convince them that it was, that I needed to go to the square to film, and eventually they came around, but it did take a while. So it was an unexpected event, of course, for me, but I ended up getting wrapped up in it, and my 2-week trip ended up extending, and I ended up being there for 6 months in 2011. So that's just a sum up of what led me to go to Yemen at that point.
So Sara, have you been back since, and have you seen any improvements? What's your take on how it's come so far since 2011, since your movie?
A lot. I mean, I go back 2 or 3 times a year, and mainly to work on film projects, either independently or with television. As on a social level, I would say that things have improved drastically. I think, and I'm talking about your urban sort of community. I'm not really talking about, not generalizing, obviously, but within the Sana'a, within networks, within sort of the media networks, and it's very inspiring to see how the youth are taking responsibility, and I think they found their voice during the revolution, whereas before, talent was buried and people weren't encouraged to do what they really wanted to do, and now there's this emerging, and the writers and activists who are really going to shape the future of Yemen. Everything has been back, however, I have seen the decline and of the security, the security situation in Yemen, and it is very worrying. I mean, every time I go back, there's either an escalation assassinations or bombings that go off in random places with the city centre. Obviously, there's an increase in kidnapping of foreigners and also locals. Anyone who somebody has an issue with, is targeted. And because if you are doing anything where you are, you're aiming to raise awareness about something, you could be targeted as you could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, you're recurring a little bit, so stay to the microphone. As the listeners may know, you're calling us from Cairo in Egypt, so the lines are also, they're a little bit weak. We will bring Ibrahim to the line. We want to talk to him about, if Yemenis would to do the revolution all over again, would they do it? Because lots of people are still skeptical, are still saying, well, the revolution shouldn't happen because of the security problem that we have in Yemen right now. There's so many fractions and so many divisions happening between the people who were won during the revolution for one cause. So, we'll try to bring Ibrahim to the line, and we will ask him. But from your perspective, Sarah, before we ask Ibrahim, what do you think, if the Yemenis were to do the revolution over again, would they do it?
I think it's a very difficult question, to be honest. I'll talk about my own personal experience and the way my family, for example, reacted. They went through a full cycle almost, where they initially were indifferent and they really didn't have a strong opinion about where they stood with regards to the revolution. And then, a few months into it, by I think March 2011, after the Karama attack or the massacre, it really kind of gave the Yemen and Yemenis a sense of, it was an awakening basically for them, and I think they felt a sense of urgency in sort of carrying out the revolution and deposing Saleh. But then as time went on, and then they saw the decline in security and the constant attack on power plants and sabotage of oil pipelines, this sort of suddenly this massive crisis ensuing afterwards. They began to change their opinions, and now to some extent they do regret having taken part in, or that the revolution did take place. They feel that it was premature for Yemen. Yemenis in general didn't really have a clear sense of what they wanted out of it. So it's a very difficult question to answer. I can't really answer that.
Ibrahim, you're on the line?
Yeah, I'm on the line.
Hello, Ibrahim. Ibrahim, to our listeners, he's a Yemeni American political and human rights activist and a co-founder of the Yemeni American Coalition for Change, a group that was established in early 2011 to support change and democracy movement in Yemen. Mustafa Khattabi is a young leader, and he is an active member in the Yemeni American community. He works for the CCR Constitutional or Center for Constitutional Rights in New York City. Ibrahim, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
We want to ask you, and I just asked Sarah this question, if Yemenis were to do the revolution again, or were to take part in Arab Spring, would they do it? And if they do, what would they change? What do you think that they missed? Something that it was a total mishap for them?
First of all, I would like to congratulate Sarah and all the Yemenis and the Karama Has Nawaz film that reached the Oscar nomination. So congratulations, Sarah.
Thank you.
I think for Yemenis, to me, is how you define revolution and what revolution is to you. Basically, what's happening right now is revolution. So you don't have to take it to the streets and start, doing massive protests. But what's happening today is, for example, the demand for change, the national dialogue. To me, that's part of the revolution. So I think Yemenis, and especially the youth, continue to do what they did in the first stage when they got rid of Saleh and his regime. Which is now demanding, a new government, demanding new constitution, greater access to the public sector, women's participation, youth participation in the government. And so that itself, to me, looks like a revolution, if not a revolution. So I think if they do anything again, they would do the same thing. It's not about taking it to the streets every day. It's about now how to change the regime, how to put a new regime in place, how to focus on development. And I think this is what we need to focus on right now. We can't just keep staying in the streets every day and demanding whoever takes over to be removed. Now we need to start thinking about how to move the country forward, and like I said, it's mainly development, mainly putting the right people in the right positions, having equal access to the system, building a new civilized system, and to me, there is no overnight solution. If you look at what happened in Brazil, Argentina, the American and the French Revolution, it took a while to stabilize the countries. So there is no overnight solution in democracies. And it's an ongoing progress where, it starts with massive public participation. And I think, the youth are what they're supposed to be doing. Maybe they're not as excited as they were, because I think people were expecting, countries like the Arab Spring countries to be Europe overnight. And I think that's not realistic, and that's not how democracy and movements happen.
Yeah, you're completely right, I feel. It's definitely an ongoing process, because a revolution, just like you said, it depends on how you define it. And it's definitely endless. But I feel like patience is key in this whole situation, especially with people back home. But let's take it back to America. What do you think, how did the Yemeni American community react to the revolution in 2011?
Is that question to me or to Sara?
To you, actually.
Ibrahim,
Okay, I think the Yemeni Americans, especially the youth, were participating in the whole process, where they got into the media, they started organizing protests, reaching out to the media, educating the American public, criticizing the U.S. foreign policy when they were not supporting the youth movement on the ground and supporting democracy and the way they're supposed to. And I think, they have, Yemeni Americans in particular, they feel they have to give back to their country, to their society, and they learn a great deal outside. So they want to be able to see Yemen as the way they see the United States. I think they have very great contribution to the Yemeni revolution back home. And so the reaction was great. I think I seen it across the board. They were so excited to see change in Yemen. They were so excited to see a new system, a new democracy. And so the reaction, I think, was very great.
Just to follow up with that question, I feel like Yemenis in diaspora are more skeptical than other people. I mean, everybody around the world, any Yemeni that's gotten out of Yemen and lived abroad. But do you think that they need to do more to contribute to the progress that's happening in Yemen? Is there anything that we can do here in the United States or for other Yemenis all around the world?
I think they're willing to do more. I think Yemeni Americans abroad follow what's happening in the ground every day. They talk about it. They wanted to do something. They want to see their country moving in a better direction. What I think needs to be done is the political system back home. The Yemeni government needs to engage the Yemenis abroad, not only in the United States, but across the board. They need to engage them. There is a lot of expertise abroad. There are a lot of educated people. There are a lot of business people that needs to be part of the system and need to bring new ideas and fresh ideas to the system. I think what we have back home is the same old regimes, whether it's an opposition or, the Saleh regime. We need fresh ideas. We need the Yemenis abroad to be participating in the new system and to contribute to the new system. That's the only way democracies function.
I want to take it now to Sara again, and Sara, and going back to March in 2011. Tell us a little bit about the squares. As we know, Yemenis went into squares. They camped in the streets. So the whole regime would be brought down, or the president should resign and his government must go. Tell us a little bit about the squares. How were they? What were people feeling like? What were the hopeful? What were they hopeful for? What they wanted to accomplish in the squares? And also, I want you to also touch on how the women showed up to the streets for the first time in Yemen.
The squares were incredible. I first went to the square in late February 2011. This is just a week after I had arrived back in Yemen, and my memory of Yemen was that it was a place where there was nothing really that happened on sort of publicly in public squares. People didn't. There was nothing as festive as this. I'd never experienced anything like it. And to appear at the square and see the hundreds and hundreds of people. At that point, there weren't the masses weren't as large as they became later. But at that point, it was really eye-opening for me to see that we were actually coming together and they were protesting as peacefully as they were. And to see sort of groups of women as well who were taking part and pitching up tents and bringing food to the protesters and demonstrating themselves. It was an incredible festive experience, and myself and my cousins and my friends began to go along as well, just to be there, just to enjoy the atmosphere, and to for once in our lives feel as though we were part of the general Yemeni community, and that we were able to influence some kind of change. So sort of leading up to the March 18th and then the attacks that happened, that was the sense that we got on a regular basis. It was a very peaceful atmosphere. They didn't antagonize anybody. They didn't. The protesters themselves were unarmed. They were being checked by marshals who, as they went into the squares, so they made sure that nobody had any weapons on them. There was popcorn and candy floss and people playing, and it was a very great place to be in. So this is what caused a huge shock when the attacks were carried out in the manner they were, because it was unexpected and because it was so disproportionate to what to anything. And
we will talk about March 18th because it's a very important date in the Yemeni Revolution. But before that, we need to take a commercial break real quick. So we are talking about the Yemeni Revolution 3 years later, hardships, hopefuls, and harvest with Adel and Hanan. We will be right back after this commercial with Sarah and Ibrahim.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
It was my job to save people, until one night, I was in a car accident. I couldn't work, and the insurance company, they fought me every step of the way. I didn't know what to do.
Call 866-YOUR-RIGHT.
I'm Shumana Kairouz. I know what it's like to be refused your right. When you call, my attorneys and I will fight to get you the compensation you deserve.
Jemana handled my medical benefits and lost wages, and she got me a settlement.
If you have been injured, call 866-YOUR-RIGHT.
And we welcome you back to Radio Baladi. This is Adel and Hanan. We're talking about Yemen, and 3 years later, after its spring, we're talking about the revolution, the accomplishments, the mishaps. We have Sarah Ishaq, director, Oscar-nominated of documentary Karama Has No Walls. We have Ibrahim Al-Qatabi, a human rights activist in New York City. Welcome to the program. We have a caller, and he wants to ask a question. So we'll bring caller Mr. Habba.
Good morning to you, Adil. Good morning, Hanan.
Thank you. Good morning.
And good morning to Sarah and to Ibrahim. Oh, and I want to salute the show of Radio Baladi and Layla Al-Husseini, and thank you for taking my call, Adil.
You're welcome. Go ahead with your question.
Adil, my question is, Yemen, and I want to salute Yemen, and I want to salute Yemen Al-Sa'id. And in the name of God, we'll return to be not happy, but more happy than before. Adil, revolution, I will respect it. This is my opinion. If the revolution respect the right of the Yemeni people and the Yemeni nation, I will say this revolution will be a revolution for the best. And I do respect Ibrahim when he say we need a fresh idea. And I agree with him. yes, a fresh idea for a fresh blood, and nothing wrong with that as long as it serves the right of the Yemeni people. My question here, Adil, and forgive me for asking this question. What is the public opinion in Yemeni street about the future of Yemen, to be the Union Yemen or to be Union North and South for two states, if the Yemeni people want that? Because the people is the power, and the power is the people, and revolution will serve its term if the Yemeni people decide that.
Your question.
Thank you for taking my call.
You are very welcome, Mr. Hubba. Thank you for the call.
God bless you. Bless Yemen.
Thank you, and God bless you. I'll repeat the question to Ibrahim and Sarah since they didn't hear Mr. Hubba. But the question was, what is the opinion of Yemenis on the streets? And he's talking about the unity of Yemen right now. And to the listeners, Yemen has been going through the national dialogue, which brought all the fractions of Yemenis into one hotel for 6, or actually took 10 months to talk about the future of the nation. So I guess the question is to Ibrahim, since he's, and to both Sarah, if you can just respond to the question in 1 minute. Go ahead. We'll start with Sarah, I guess. Sarah, are you still on the line?
Sorry, it broke up a little bit.
Yeah. The question was, what is the opinion of Yemenis on the streets? Do they still want a one country, or do they are looking for more a federal system, or are they looking for totally two different countries?
I can't generalize again with my answer, but from what my experience is from people that I've spoken to is that it is very much split, where there's because of the lethal factionalism that's taking place, and the power struggles from within different sects and different I think there is a large divide where the secessionists and the southern separatists want to be separate, and you also have the issues with the Houthis in the north, who also want they want some form of autonomy, and they want so I think it's a difficult one. I think there is a large divide where there are those who want to be independent, and there are those who want to be unified. So I think Ibrahim's actually probably the best person to ask about this, to give you a bit more insight.
Ibrahim, what do you think?
It all depends on who you ask, right? What I think right now, the problem was never in the unity itself. The problem was never in the land itself to be divided. I think the real problem we had in Yemen, and still have in Yemen, is the system. What kind of system the Yemenis have? Yemenis need equal access to the rule of law. They need a true democracy that would ensure everyone have equal share in the system, which didn't happen in the past decade, which didn't happen during Saleh's regime. So basically, I think, different groups have different demands. Let's say the people who were, got kicked in the 1994 war, many of them need to go back to the southern state, because that's the only way they can go back to power, or gain control over the land again. Exactly, and equally for the Houthis, they now think about Saada as their part, and they're going to maintain control there, and maybe they can take parts of the north. I think what's missing in Yemen is a true system that Yemenis all can be treated equally in that system, and I think that's what's missing for all Yemenis. And if we start feeling that people having true access to democracy, and I think Yemenis right now looking at the federal system, decentralizing the whole regime. It didn't happen in the past. So I think that what we need is a new federal system. I'm talking about a public model, just like the one in Germany or in the U.S., where you still have Sana'a or Aden as a capital, but then everyone can have their own power, let's say, I personally see the new system should be based on states, where states have their own elections, elect their own, governor, elect their own city council, and start building their own cities and start competing with different states. I think this is when it needs to be done for Yemen. Even with the new talking about having 6 regions or 6 federals within Yemen, it might not serve the Yemenis well, because you're now centralizing the system into 6 new countries or whatever you want to call it. It's not going to help the Yemenis greatly, because if you group now 3 different cities, for example, or 3 different states in one system, then they're all going to start competing about who should be the capital for the whole new system. How are you going to distribute the power among 3 new states? What I think, and what it's been very successful everywhere in the world, especially and those democracies, is the public system, is a public model where people at the local level decide what they need for their own. And this is not being talked about, much in Yemen, because many of the same elites, same political groups, they're the ones that are actually trying to, design the new Yemen and take control over the new Yemen. So it's not like the people's main demand is being met. So, and again, I think the problem in Yemen, it's a one country. You can't, the society is so connected, whether in the south and the north, through marriages, through businesses, through, interaction. So you can't just say, you're from the south, and you're from the north, and so we have nothing to do with each other. At the end of the day, we shared one land, regardless. We share one national security. So it's going to be hard to separate. If Yemen itself sometimes considered as part of the international peace and security, and a lot of great countries around the world have concerns about what's happening in Yemen. Imagine for Yemenis within Yemen. So to me, it's never the land, it's never the different groups. It's always been the system. Yep. Mm-hmm. What kind of system are we going to have in Yemen?
And, just to follow up on that, once you have those regionals, they may just compete with each other negatively as well. If the central government was weak, now it's going to be weaker. So, but we do hope the best for Yemen to come forward. So let's go back to 2011.
Yeah, Sarah, on March 18th, and this is the foundation of your movie. The youth were peacefully in the streets protesting, and then there was this big shock. What happened? Can you tell us more about that, and how you reacted to the whole situation?
I'm really sorry again, it broke up. Can you just repeat that, please?
No problem. So on March 18th, which is the foundation of your movie, Karama Has No Walls, the youth were peacefully protesting in the streets, as usual, and then there was this big shock. So what was your reaction to the whole situation, and what really, happened? And
well, the day before the attack took place, on Friday 18th of March, I was in Square. And that I was filming at that point in the field hospital, and I went along with my aunt, who lived just half a mile away from where the attack took place. So we were walking along, and we saw the wall that's featured in the film that was built to cordon off the protesters to restrict their movement and to basically stop them from expanding further down the street, one of the main streets actually. And we speculated about it. We weren't too sure as to what. We sort of, it was on our mind definitely that there was something, there's something fishy about it. And then we just went about our day as normal. Filmed in the field hospital. There were people who'd been attacked, by tear gas and whatnot. So the following day, I do remember at that point as well that there were, people did warn us not to go to the square because they felt that they just heard rumors that something was going to happen. The sources weren't clear, so you can never be too sure. But what ended up happening was my family and I stayed at home, and I was filming at that point. I was working on another film about the family and how they were responding to the revolution from within the house. And the attack suddenly happened, and they were on TV, so we were watching what was going on television. And of course, at that point, I got onto the telephone to speak to a couple of my activists there, and the chaos was, you could sense it. Even just speaking to them on the telephone, you could hear the gunshot, gunfire in the background. We decided to go to the square to try and help, and either by taking supplies to the field hospital or to donate blood, and we weren't able to get in. It was, it was complete chaos that ensued once the gunfire happened. But to give you a sense of what actually took place on the day, was that the wall that they built in the square was. It was covered in petrol, and they set the wall alight during the Friday prayers. So this was the back, it was behind the protesters. So as they were praying, they didn't actually see what was happening behind them. Meanwhile, this fire was set alight, and the smoke from the fire formed a smoke screen. So if you go up, the snipers who ended up opening fire on the protesters were able to go onto the rooftops of the buildings adjacent and surrounding the square to open fire without being basically. So there was, a shower of bullets, descending upon these protesters, unarmed protesters and children, and they had no idea where the bullets or the shooting was coming from. They tried to take shelter, but to no avail, and they ended up breaking down the wall with their bare hands, basically. And the reason they didn't retreat was because they were scared that the armed people, the sort of plainclothes armed militia, I guess, if you would like to call them that, were worried that they would approach or encroach upon the square and cause more bloodshed. So they basically used them as human shields.
And your movie clearly shows that, Sarah. And for the listeners, if you would like to watch the movie, it's screening now all over the United States. Just go to KaramaHasNoWalls.com and look for the screening near you. In Michigan, there are numerous locations where you can watch the movie for a small fee, namely, trying to find the places here, in the Detroit Film Theater, here in downtown Detroit at the DIA, or in Grand Rapids in the UICA, in Michigan Theater in Ann Arbor. There's also the Rivera Theater in Three Rivers in Michigan. The Flint Institute of Arts is also showing the movie. In New York, IFC Center in New York City, as well as the Picture House, the Little Theater, and they're screening all the Oscars-nominated movies, and your movie is Karama Has No Walls, short documentary. How excited are you, Sarah?
Very much so. Especially because we made this film with the intention of trying to raise awareness about what happened, and our wildest dream was that we would get 5,000 hits on YouTube. We didn't really expect it to get this far. Because we didn't have this, we didn't really expect it, and we just worked really hard to try and raise awareness by screening the films at universities. In fact, you helped me add it with one of the first ever screenings of the film in Michigan, and that was great. Just to get people talking about it, and to keep people reminded of what actually took place, so that this wasn't another incident in history that went unnoticed and unquestioned, and people weren't held accountable. And so now for it to reach this level where it is being screened in over 150 theaters just in the next month in the USA, and people are asking for it all over the world, and it's getting a huge amount of attention. Not so much for us as people, or it's more because of the cause, and it has really extended the voices of those who weren't able to reach the masses, and it's really given them a voice. And I think hopefully it will also encourage more Yemenis to make films that matter, and really have faith in themselves that you don't really need much. You just need a camera. You need to have the determination, and you just need to go for it and raise awareness about your country, because it's really our responsibility to do that.
Your movie features two youth who are Anwar and Salim, and we will be talking about them right after the commercial. So we will take a commercial break. We still have 10 minutes on the show. If you would like to call us in, 248-557-3300. We will be right back after this commercial break.
Dr. Al-Zuhaili specializes in diabetes and endocrinology and has been conducting research for over 12 years. Right now, there are several clinical studies actively enrolling for both adult and pediatric patients with type 2 diabetes. Under Dr. Al-Zuhaili's care, participants in the clinical research trials receive free lab work, medical procedures, medical supplies, and medications to assist in their treatment. Qualified participants are also compensated for their time and travel in addition to receiving top care for their diabetes treatment and control. The research department is equipped with experienced and friendly staff who will work to manage patient care and schedule accommodations. Please contact Al-Zuhaili Medical Consultants at 1331 Monroe Street in Dearborn. Visit alzuhailidiabetes.com and call 313-581-8903. 313-581-8903.
المحامي ستيفن لجانا المحامي القدير في الهجرة والتجنس يعلن افتتاحه لمكتبه الواقع في مدينة ديربون وتماما على 5300 شيفر رود. المحامي لجانا لديه خبرة طويلة في قضايا الهجرة والتجنس، قضايا الترحيل، يتعامل أيضا مع قضايا اللجوء من داخل وخارج الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وأيضا جميع أنواع الفيز. المحامي لجانا لديه مكاتب منتشرة في العديد من الولايات الأمريكية، بوسطن، نيويورك، واشنطن وميشيغان. لجميع استفساراتكم القانونية اتصلوا بالمحامي لجانا على الرقم 313-945-0022 313-945-0022. جميع الاستشارات مجانية لمستمعي صباح الخير ميشيغان.
And welcome back to Radio Baladi. Our program for the show today is the Yemeni Revolution, Hardships, Aspiration, and Harvest. Today on the show we have Sara and Ibrahim. Sara, just to follow up with Adil's question or comment, can you give us just a snippet about the story of Anwar and Salim, who are featured in your movie? Don't tell too much because we want to leave the story for them to watch the actual movie. But can you just tell us just a little bit about why you featured them and why it was so critical?
The reason I featured them is because, knowing myself, watching news footage and watching attacks happen on television is, on a regular basis, as we were at that point in Yemen and in the Middle East in general, you become desensitized to what you're seeing and you become detached, and they just these images that we see become, they become reduced to mere news archives, and we cease to relate and we cease to connect and empathize. And what I wanted, because at that point I'd met victims and I'd met their families and I'd met, extraordinary, brave people and especially youth, really young people who were doing great things. And through meeting them and then connecting with the story, the attacks and hearing their voices describe exactly what they'd witnessed and what they'd experienced, that was what made it real to me, because I could have easily stayed at home and watched the footage on TV and felt devastated for a day or two or a week, but then as self-preservation, as human beings, psychologically we shut down and we try to distance ourselves from these things. Where we're having that human connection and having the voices of the victims and the people, and especially young people who had, they were completely blameless and completely innocent in this. Even with regards to decisions to go to the square, it wasn't, you still can't, especially if it was out of curiosity, as it was in the case of Salim, who was 12 at the time. And featuring them was the only way that I could really humanize and make it tangible and make it emotional and make it real again. Because watching the footage on its own, I found myself, blank after hours and hours and hours of watching the blood and the massacre taking place, I felt myself, I myself stopped to respond. I didn't feel emotional. However, listening to the interviews of the people and watching them and looking into their eyes and seeing the pain that they were, that could then really begin to absorb, the how extreme and how. So that was the reason for featuring the two.
Yep. Ibrahim, what are your wishes, I guess, for Yemen? What do you expect to happen in the next few years? I know that we're out with the national dialogue. It's completely done. What do you think is going to happen, and what do you wish for Yemen to happen?
I just want to touch a little bit on Sara's film, and I want to say that what's unique about Al-Karama Has No Walls is that it's not just based on real life. It's a reality. It was an actual, film from the actual protest, and it was just not just a storytelling. And it was showing just people's struggles and what they willing to pay for freedom and justice. And to me, that was so unique, and it's not like any other film. And so, congratulations again to Saad, to Yemenis, and to all freedom fighters around the world for this great film. Going back to what I would Yemen, I think, we still have a long way to go. There is so many different groups that wants to take over, that wants to have a greater access to power, whether it's Salahis or Houthis or people in the Southern movement. My overall feeling and opinion, reading about other revolutions, reading about what happened in Brazil, Argentina, America and different parts of the world, we're in the right track and the right direction. It's going to take a while to, for the country to be stabilized in a way. But what I think is that, participation and demand must continue, and it will continue until we put great institutions and place, until we achieve, some sort of good judicial system, good governance, accountability, transparency, manage the resources in the country with the right people, and bring the right people to power. I think it's going to take a while to stabilize the country, but I think we're heading in the right direction. We have great youth. I was, the last time I was in Yemen, it was just about a month and a half ago. I was there at the beginning of the revolution. It's a big difference in terms of thinking, youth, sitting down and coffee corners and places, talking about businesses, talking about how to lobby for certain issues within the government. That's a true democracy. Right. I just hope that we keep pushing for the country to go in the right direction.
Sarah, in less than 30 seconds, what are your wishes for the country?
Oh God, 30 seconds.
Yes.
I want more films to come out of Yemen that raise awareness, and yes, world peace.
Definitely. Well, we would thank Sara Ishaq, the director of Karama Has No Walls, an Oscars-nominated movie, and Ibrahim Al-Qatabi, a human rights activist in New York City, for their time today and this wonderful conversation. If you have missed it, you can catch it on Radio Baladi hashtag or GMM Radio on Twitter or on our Facebook page, Good Morning Michigan US Herb Radio. So thank you, Hanan. This has been great. Thank you to the guests.
Yes, your input is very valuable, and I'm sure that everybody learned so much from what you said today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ibrahim.
Thank you for having us, and good luck.
And for the listeners, have a blessed Friday and a great weekend.
WNZK has available a few good hours of airtime for a few good programs to serve their communities. Radio is better than ever in targeting an audience that listens to what you say. Learn more about this exciting radio broadcasting opportunity by calling WNZK Radio at... This is WNZK, Dearborn Heights, Detroit.